Hi, this is Emily of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we hang out and just talk movie and TV news and reviews, and it's awesome. A new show comes out every single Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Cinema Stories. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Sports are the reason I'm out of shape. I watch them all on TV. Welcome to Completely Serious. That's saying, and so true, right? So true, especially after a long weekend of jamming jelly beans and corn chips down our throats and watching some really exciting football. We all probably feel a bit out of shape. But that saying, that catchphrase, was sent to us by listener Sammy So-So. Thank you, Sammy, for that not-so-so-so catchphrase. We appreciate it. And again, welcome to Completely Serious, the show where we have fun and talk sports. That's our unofficial slogan. You won't find it on a billboard or a bus stop bench or anything else that might distract you from driving, but that is what this show is all about, having fun and talking sports. And today, we have on our show John Herrick. John has an extensive sports background, but currently he's anchoring and producing content for 93.1 WIBC in Indianapolis, Indiana, where you are a regular Swiss Army knife, right, John?
Yeah, I've done just about anything you can imagine in radio. I've done news, I've done weather, I've done sports. I've gone out, done live remotes, done promotional events. But my true, I would say my biggest passion is sports and covering sports. And I've done a lot of play-by-play, with football, basketball. I've even done softball, baseball. One time I even did play-by-play for a track and field, event at the Division III, national championships when they were at DePaul University when I was there. So, and I've done volleyball. So, I mean, you just, in this business, you learn pretty quickly that if you want to get gigs, I say gigs because very few things are actual full-time jobs in this business anymore. But if you want to get gigs or opportunities to showcase what you can do, you just have to be as versatile as possible. And I think I try to do that to the best of my ability.
How do you cover play-by-play for a track and field event? What do you describe? How do you paint that picture? That seems like it'd be pretty challenging.
I mean, in that particular instance, it was about two DePaul athletes that we were following. So I asked my faculty advisor, I said, I've never done this. So what exactly are you looking for? And he said, well, Lauren Reich is going to be running in the women's event that we need to be following, and she's got a very good chance of winning that. And then Chris Dietrich is the guy who's having really good success in the men's event, so we need to follow him. And really, just when you're ready and when they get to their event, just call the station and the board op will put you on, and just call the event as it happens until it's over, and just do the best that you can, and I know you'll do really well. That's what he told me. And I was like, okay, well, I was like, this might be the best bad idea you've ever had, but sure, let's go ahead and give it a shot. And we did, and it went over really well. I know that the families of those two individuals were listening, and they really appreciated it. So it was definitely one of the more unorthodox experiences I've ever had, but I'm certainly not immune to trying new things, and that was definitely a very new thing.
Well, you're trying something new here today, John, and we appreciate it. And I want you to tell me what it's like being a morning newsie and getting up at the back crack of dawn every day. I feel like you have one of the more undervalued jobs maybe on the planet. You are the first person most people hear when they get up in the morning, or at least you're putting out content and being kind of a voice for the people that early in the morning. Yeah,
it is a really cool opportunity. It has its big challenges. But one thing that it's helped me do, I think, is that, I've tried to also live a bit of a healthier lifestyle. When you go and cover sports, you don't always work the best hours, so you don't always eat the best food or drink the healthiest things. And one thing I've learned is if you want to get to bed at a decent hour, you got to lay off the coffee, you got to lay off the sugary drinks, you got to try to get to bed at a decent hour so you're not, having to suck down a 5-hour energy drink early in the morning when you need to be on your top game, so you can get the best content out to people. And so that's kind of helped me, wind down in the evening so I get to bed at a better time and I can be up and refueled and recharged for the next day. But also, what's neat about it is, there is not a radio station that does news like WIBC. And even though I'm not a news expert per se, I grew up listening to WIBC a lot when I was a kid. It was always on in my grandma's car, in one of my family members' car. Somebody always had it on, and nobody covers news like WIBC in Indianapolis. They do it the right way, and even when we have a staff that is stretched so very thin, we still have a staff of 7 people, which is bigger than most news stations have in the country, and we are on a big FM signal. Most news talk stations are not like that. They're on an AM signal, and they have a staff that's way less than 7. And not only do we supply content for WIBC, but we also supply content for what's called Network Indiana. And Network Indiana, of all of the states that have network affiliates that supply that type of content, we went to my boss went to a convention in Las Vegas, and we won the most statewide awards. Network Indiana won the most awards for the most statewide networks in the country. We won the most awards of any state and it's not a surprise if you've heard any of the content on Network Indiana. We do a phenomenal job of covering news and bringing people the stories they want to hear, whether it's about oil and gas or about the opioid epidemic or about what your legislators are saying and what laws are getting passed, what laws are not getting passed that should be getting passed. What the mayor is saying, what the governor is saying, all very important newsworthy topics that people want to hear. And it was so cool that we were able to win the most awards of any state. And when our boss came back, all the MS brass were so happy with us that they catered a free lunch for us from Prime 47, which is a very popular steakhouse in downtown Indianapolis. We did that on Friday, and but those kind of experiences fuel you and you just want to stay on top. I feel like I was a moocher in that situation because I just started in September. I didn't do anything to contribute to those awards at all. So I was like, well, I guess I'll enjoy a free lunch, even though I did nothing to earn it. But it's great to be a part of the team I'm a part of, for sure.
That's when you start making up stuff when you're at the meeting. You say, "Oh no, I was here back then. You just didn't see me." Type of thing.
Yeah. I was here and just telepathically telling you what stories to cover, helping you guys go and get what you needed to there.
John, when you first started working at WIBC, you put together a really good piece on the Indiana Pacers, and whether it's the Indianapolis Colts or the Indianapolis Checkers, RIP, you guys have got such a great sports community in Indianapolis. You've done a little bit of covering that along with a lot of great news content too, but do you enjoy being part of that great sports environment?
Yeah, and that's kind of what when people in Oklahoma, when I was leaving my job in Oklahoma and they knew that I was leaving to become a news anchor, they said, well, I mean, isn't it going to be weird for you to leave and just do news? I said, no, you don't understand. Indianapolis is such a huge sports market that the sporting events that happen are news. I'm not only when Paul George comes back from Oklahoma to Indiana for the first time and plays the Pacers at Bankers Life, that is not just a sports story. That is very much a news story, and how the fans reacted to him, what he contributed to the city, his exit, and how he went about it. How he kind of just didn't want to be in Indianapolis anymore, and Hoosiers take that pretty seriously. It's like, listen, if you don't want to be here, we don't want you here. We're proud of our basketball. We're proud of our heritage, and if you don't want to be a part of what we want to do here, then you can go somewhere else, and we'll find someone who is. And enter Victor Oladipo from that trade, and Victor always loves to say when he's playing, "This is my house. This is my." I love being here, and then he goes out and puts it on the line every night, and these fans in this community are really embracing this team. But that's one thing that's great about the boss I work for, Chris Davis, is that he understands how big sports are just on the news landscape too. Not just Pacers, but whether it's the Colts, whether it's the Indy 500, IU basketball, Purdue basketball, Butler basketball, it doesn't matter. It could be the Indianapolis Indians. They all contribute something of news to this city in some shape or form. And I think we do a great job of going out and finding out what that is when it comes to be.
You brought up Victor Oladipo. I wanted to ask you about him. I have a theory, or maybe more of an idea. I think somebody should strap his ankles down to the state of Indiana and never let him leave, because he was so good at IU, goes to Orlando, OKC, Oklahoma City, near where you were at, and wasn't as good.
Yeah.
Now he comes back to the Pacers and is incredible. He should never leave the state of Indiana.
Yeah, he shouldn't leave the state of Indiana, and neither should Lance Stevenson. Lance Stevenson left Indiana, and he had success nowhere else. Every other place he went to was a disaster, and so he comes back to Indiana, and this town embraces him, and Victor was good in Orlando, but Orlando wasn't winning, and the environment wasn't great. And then he goes to Oklahoma City, and it's not that he wasn't good in Oklahoma City, but it's just that you're playing in the shadow of Russell Westbrook, and you don't. And I think he got injured once or twice. He had some. But the thing is, you're never going to be the star that he is in Indiana when you're playing with Russell Westbrook. Not that Russell doesn't try to get guys involved. Obviously, he set the triple-double record last year because he does do a great job of distributing it and getting assists. But you just won't be the level of star that he is in Indiana, Victor Oladipo, that he would have been in Oklahoma City. So the trade, I was sort of perplexed by the trade like everybody else when it first went down, but I knew Victor Oladipo was going to love it because he knew when he came here, this is going to be his team. What also has been surprising has been the way everybody else has played. We didn't know much about Domantas Sabonis, but he's been outstanding. We figured Lance would bring a lot of energy, which he has, but then, Corey Joseph and Thaddeus Young have been a big surprise too. And Bojan Bogdanovic has been a major contributor, for this team. But I think what we saw when Victor was injured, when he's hurt, the team really struggles in his absence. And so he is the straw that stirs the drink, and it's good to have him back out there. And if they lose him, they're going to need to have a better backup plan in place, because when he was out, boy did they struggle.
Have you had your presence graced yet by the great Lance Stevenson? Have you run into him yet, maybe on the streets or maybe while you're working?
I've walked past him a couple of times. I haven't actually spoken to him, but when he walks past you, he's so intense. He doesn't really when he's in the zone, he doesn't almost want to speak to anybody. He just wants to go past everyone. And then when he's in the locker room and he's talking to the media, then he's all happy-go-lucky, or he's not so happy-go-lucky if they lose. But if you ask any Pacer player about Lance Stevenson, they all have the same response. They just go, "Oh, that's Lance. That's Lance. That's what he's going to do." They just. But you know what? That response is a good thing, because that team is letting Lance be Lance. They're not trying to change him or say, you need to stop doing this or whatever. They just let him be him. And, of course, he knows where the line is, and he's got to be careful not to cross it. And, so far, at least, he hasn't. But he's always been fun and interesting to watch, win or lose.
Yeah, he's one of the athletes I think if I could pick one to interview, I would pick him. And that actually brings me to my next question. If there was an athlete, we like to ask this one on Completely Serious, if you could pick an athlete to interview, who would it be, and what is the question that you think would set them off, the one that would get them to give maybe that 5-second soundbite you could play over and over again on SportsCenter?
Well, okay, so when you say set them off, do you mean like really happy, or do you mean like it would make them mad that they would, that they would give a pretty, controversial response?
Either way, a question that would get them to give a really good emotional response.
Well, okay, so on the one hand, I hate doing interviews with people that don't want to talk. But on the other hand, I like the challenge. I like the challenge of having to interview people that don't want to open up, and maybe you end up getting 8 minutes of audio out of them when you thought you'd only get 2 or 3. I like that. I like the challenge of doing that. So the one player that I would interview would be Russell Westbrook, and there's so many reasons why. Because number one, the Thunder organization is so incredibly protective of their players. They don't want the players to do any interviews with any media outlet. And I know this because when I worked in Oklahoma, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't let me interview the coaches. The only time they made those guys available was before and after games, when they got to dictate it. So I would love to just get Russell Westbrook in an environment where he could let his guard down a little bit and just ask him some poignant questions and try to get him talking, which would be hard because I know how much he loves the media. But the question that I think would really set him off would be this. I think that, even though he's set the triple-double record, and he's really good at getting double-digit assists, and he's a really good passer, and he gets his teammates involved. There are some theories out there by several pundits, and I'm not going to sit there and debate if they're true or not, but I've heard people say that, yeah, he may act like he's not a selfish player, but he stat chases. And there was one game I remember in particular against the Phoenix Suns. I felt like he was stat chasing and trying to get assists to try to get to a triple-double, even when it would have been better for him to score. Now, I don't think that he does that, but I think that it would be an interesting question to ask him to address the critics that say that you're a selfish player, because you're stat chasing and you care more about your stats than you do the team's chances of winning a championship. And that I would just say, just because I would want to hear him go ballistic. I would want to hear him just be like, bro, you tripping. You don't know what you're talking about. He would be, because I watched him go off on a writer from the Oklahoma newspaper, Barry Trammell. I personally witnessed that happen 2 times. And the first time, the second time, actually both times, really, Barry Trammell, I don't think he sort of asked a question that were mildly annoying, but I don't think that they were, questions that were really as bad as they could have been. But Russell just didn't like it, and he got snippy with him. And in one instance, he told him he didn't like Barry, and then in another instance, he was like, "Don't try to split our team up. You want to blame, you want to blame us all. Blame us all. You want to blame me, but don't try to split us up." And Barry's like, "I'm not trying to split you up." It was one of the most awkward moments ever. And then I was in the press conference, and I had told the lady in charge of the press conference that I wanted to ask a question. Well, so she lets Barry Trammell ask the first question, and then
you're done for.
Now all of a sudden she wants to give me the microphone because the whole room has gotten intense because of it. And so I was just like, oh no, this is so awkward. And a bunch of my friends were like, dude, you should have just asked the same question that he asked, only do it again. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Then the whole building would have erupted. No. I was ready to just diffuse the situation any way I could.
Had you done that, I could have seen Russell Westbrook just ripping apart one of those fancy 3-piece suits that he wears for press conferences, and just tossing it at the media.
Yeah, and just knocking the table over and just leaving, And then the rest of the media is mad at me because instead of standing up there and giving answers and giving them content, he storms off and now he's gone.
John, I'm completely serious. We like to ask our guests to describe sports events with onomatopoeias, sounds that maybe represent how you felt about something in the sporting world. And this past weekend in the NFL was so great, I wanted to bring this up with you. So I'm going to have you describe the weekend in the NFL in 3 sounds. I have mine to give you some time to think. My first sound would be as in, I think we all saw the Patriots winning their game. So when they did, it was just a matter of, yep, they won. We saw that coming. And then my second one would be, all right, as in watching Jacksonville upset Pittsburgh. It was kind of their coming out, and it's like, all right, we see you, Jacksonville. And third is, no way, even though it's not quite an onomatopoeia. That was a collective sound when Stephon Diggs scored that last touchdown for Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But if you can give me your 3 sounds or maybe your 3 exclamative phrases that you would say to describe this past weekend of the NFL.
I would say my first sound would be yawn, that in reference to the Patriots game. Yeah, okay, here we go. Yeah, they, I knew that they were going to come. The Patriots do this, even when you think they're boring, or even when you think they're going to lose or they get off to a bad start like they did against Tennessee. You just think they're going to come back, and they did. And so and then that game got turned into a yawner. And then my second sound would be, wow. I was saying now the reason why that's in relation to the Jaguars-Steelers game, because I couldn't believe that the Jaguars won. Now I also thought that when the Steelers started coming back, I thought Jacksonville's going to blow this. Blake Bortles is going to find a way to throw an interception or make a mistake or do something to cost his team the game, and he didn't. He was amazing down the stretch. Now, they had the big help from the defense, and the defense made a couple of really big plays, and Leonard Fournette was a beast running the ball. But that game still shocked me, especially since the Steelers kind of talked some trash and acted like they kind of had a one-way ticket to play New England.
Yeah.
And Jacksonville surprised them. And then my third sound when I was watching, I'll just give you the reaction in relation to the Stephon Diggs catch was what? I mean, I couldn't believe that had just happened. I mean, I thought for sure that even if he caught the ball, he was going to fall down out of bounds, and everybody's killing that safety who missed the tackle.
Yeah,
but I mean, the thing is, he almost, even though he missed the tackle, he still almost fell down.
Mm-hmm.
He still almost got Diggs to fall down out of bounds, and Diggs did an unbelievable job to stay in bounds and score the touchdown. But it's crazy that look at the 4 quarterbacks that are now left in contention for the Super Bowl. It's Tom Brady, who I think we all thought would be there.
Sure.
Then it's Case Keenum, Blake Bortles, and Nick Foles. It's just incredible that those are the 3 other quarterbacks that are vying for the chance to win the Super Bowl. And that I would really be. It would be crazy if it's the Vikings and the Jaguars in the Super Bowl. I don't think. I think some people would think that's a real big stinker, but I think it would be great. It would just go totally counter to what we've been seeing, which is the Patriots and someone else, or that's quintessential teams with elite quarterbacks. It'd be interesting to see how these teams would play each other without elite quarterbacks and how they would try to win these games. But that could still happen.
Sure.
But that play by Stephon Diggs will be something that we don't forget ever. I think that will live on in playoff lore, right up there with, the Tennessee Titans lateral on the kickoff return, the immaculate reception,
Sure.
Just so many other great playoff plays we've seen. That one will be memorable for an incredibly long time.
I think your sound summed it up perfectly too. I think you captured that moment really well. That's well done.
It was the best I could come up with. I could have tried to steal something from the Vikings radio network, because I've listened to their call of that final play about 3. It is incredible. And generally it's not good for the color guy to scream and yell over the play-by-play guy. But in that particular instance, it was incredibly well done. And I didn't have a problem with it, because it was so shocking that who could blame the guy for getting that? Who could blame both of them for getting that excited? Because, they're another step closer to being able to possibly broadcast the Super Bowl, and Paul Allen's waited a long time to do that with the Vikings. So he's looking forward to it.
If you could go out to dinner with 3 athletes, who would they be and why? Have you thought about this? I know this is something that maybe sports fans think about from time to time. Who'd you want to hang out with? Who'd you like to meet? Past, present, whoever you want to put. If you could go out to dinner with 3 athletes, who would they be and why?
Well, man, I surveyed. I thought about this question for a while, because I thought about maybe doing an athlete from a different sport for each one of the 3. I thought about maybe interviewing somebody from the from Major League Baseball. I'm a big Cubs fan, so maybe like an Anthony Rizzo or a Chris Bryant. But I came to these 3, and I think it's pretty good. I definitely would have Peyton Manning at the dinner table.
Sure.
My favorite player growing up, my favorite athlete growing up to watch was Reggie Miller. Okay. And so I would definitely want him at the table. And then the third guy I would want to have at the table is Kevin Durant. Now, Reggie being because he's my favorite player, what he did for the Pacers, helping put the city on the map with that franchise when they were possibly on the brink of, leaving Indiana or possibly being, defunct, but then he helped bring them back to life. And then what he means to the city. And then, Peyton Manning, just, my gosh, Peyton Manning is so funny, so enjoyable to talk to. We've seen him on Saturday Night Live. We've seen him in the Nationwide commercials, the Papa John's commercials. I would love to get those 2 guys' thoughts about being stars in Indianapolis and what it was like for them, and just kind of, how they were able to ride the ups and downs of their careers, and what it was like to kind of carry the city on its back, because those guys were heroes to everybody when they were here. And then, Kevin, I would love to get Kevin Durant's full inside perspective on his decision to leave Oklahoma City, because I was there when that whole thing went down. I thought the whole entire state was on suicide watch, because nobody thought that was going to happen. I mean, I think most people thought he was going to stay in Oklahoma City, and he leaves. And not only does he leave, but and this is what Thunder fans love to tell me, well, at least you guys with Paul George, he told you that he wanted to be traded and you could get something in return for him. Kevin Durant didn't even allow the Thunder to get anything in return for him. He just left. And that's very true. And I think there's a big, I would love to know what happened behind the scenes. Was it something that Russell Westbrook said? Did he do something? Was there something about him that he did to you that made you upset? Was it just a series of events that made you just sick of the organization, or was it the appeal of the Warriors? And then the reason I'd love to have him at the dinner table with Reggie and with Peyton is, number one, we've already seen Peyton Manning razz Kevin Durant at the ESPYs. Number two, they both of those guys, Peyton Manning didn't want to go to Denver. Peyton wanted to stay in Indianapolis for his whole career, but then his injury and Jim Irsay just released him. He wanted to stay in Indianapolis for his whole career. Reggie did stay in Indianapolis his whole career. I would love to see what advice they would give Kevin Durant. And Reggie, we already saw him write an opinion piece about how he didn't agree with Kevin Durant's decision. So the dynamic between those three guys at the dinner table would be incredibly interesting to watch, especially if alcohol was involved, because then they would really let their guard down if they had a glass of wine or a glass of beer. It would be really entertaining to watch.
That's very in-depth and well thought out of on your part. I actually want to go to the Peyton Manning and Reggie Miller thought. I find it interesting that those may be the two, or at least very close to the two biggest athletes in Indianapolis history. They're right up there, I guess. And two of your favorite athletes. Do you look at them differently as a fan? I ask that because Peyton Manning, for somebody on the outside, is so well liked on all these commercials. Everybody rooted for him. And Reggie Miller, big in Indianapolis, big in Indiana. Outside of that, though, somewhat disliked just because of his personality. Do you look at them different, or do you have an equal liking for both of them?
Well, they both did some things that, would irritate me from time to time. I felt like, and it's kind of like, you have family members and you love them, but they do things that irritate you. And it's kind of the same thing when you have, when you idolize someone or you root for someone, sometimes they'll do something that you really get irritated by. And I think for Peyton, he sometimes loved to micromanage things a lot when he played. And I think that he sometimes had a hard time relinquishing control, and I think that might have been a big reason why he might have struggled in some of the big playoff games, and that's why he received a lot of criticism. But on the other hand, it's that attention to detail that made him one of the greatest to ever do it. So it's kind of like you got to take the good with the bad there. But he's a pretty big global icon because of all of the games that he's played in and the fact that he's been on so many commercials. Reggie, I understand a little bit. He's a little bit less so. He's probably become more nationally recognized as a broadcaster because he's worked for TNT now for a long time. But yes, outside of Indianapolis, though, when he played, you either loved him or you hated him. And I think most people who hated New York loved Reggie because it was like he was always the guy who was never afraid to go up against the New York Knicks and just try to flatline them, and then would go on TV and was not afraid to talk to reporters and say, I hate the New York Knicks, and I hope we go out and embarrass them tonight. And that would endear him to some fans, and that would make him disliked by others. But he was always interesting nonetheless. And then there were some times, I think, where he got put on the national stage when he went up against Michael Jordan.
Sure.
Couldn't beat Michael Jordan in a playoff series, but always loved to compete against him, and that always generated some strong reaction. But yes, definitely when you're in that city and he's your guy, you just look at it differently. You just do.
John Herrick, thanks for jumping on Completely Serious. Can you tell people where they can find you both on air and online?
Yes. So if you want to find my work online, it's always I'm always at WIBC.com. I always try to write at least 3 new web articles a day about different stories we're covering in Indianapolis. So WIBC.com there. Also, I'm always updating content on the station's Twitter page at 93 WIBC. And then, of course, my own Twitter handle is at John Herrick 10, JOHNHERRICK, and then the number 10. So those are the 3 platforms that you can find me on. Also, I've been calling games for a company out here on the side when I'm not doing news and working at WIBC. In the evenings, I'll have the opportunity to call games for what is the Indiana Sports Radio Network. And their website where they have games is indianasrn.org. So I'm also on there. I'm trying to be on as many platforms as I can.
Sure. John Herrick from the Indiana Sports Radio Network and WIBC on Completely Serious. We're part of the Public House Media family, and we'll talk to you next week.